It was a long journey for me to go from bedside nurse to a work-from-home nurse. So why, after finally getting the work-from-home job of my dreams, would I quit that job? That's the topic of this week's episode of the Stay at Home Nurse podcast. Welcome to the Stay at Home Nurse podcast. I'm your host, Deanna Cooper Gillingham. For over 25 years, I've strived to use my nurse credentials to find work that fit my lifestyle, whether it was raising my 4 children and 3 fur babies, traveling the world, or moving to Mexico and living on the Caribbean Sea. Sometimes I succeeded, and sometimes I failed, but I always learned from the experience. Now, I want to help you by sharing what worked and what didn't work. There are so many opportunities out there for nurses today. The Stay at Home Nurse podcast will inspire and equip you to have a nursing career that is meaningful and supports your lifestyle. Now let's get started. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode. This week, I want to talk about why I left my full-time work-from-home nurse job. It took me several years to get this job, and it was a very purposeful plan. So why, after finally getting what I thought was the perfect job, would I quit? So let's back up for a minute and talk about why I wanted to work from home in the first place. I worked very hard and purposefully to get a work from home position. You see, I had an injury that prevented me from working on my feet. So I found an office job, but that office job had a 2-hour commute daily in rush hour traffic. This left me feeling drained. So I moved to a department that allowed me to work from home most of the time. And I realized how much I loved working from home. I loved the flexibility that it gave me in my day. I loved not having to rush out the door and rush through the rush hour traffic to get to work and then rush into the building and then work for my 8 hours and then fight the rush hour traffic to get home. And it just left me feeling drained. So on those days where I was able to work from home, I always felt really amazing, like I had plenty of energy at the end of my day. So I decided that that's what I wanted to do full time. I wanted to find a job where I could work full time remotely. And I did. After getting my certification, I was able to find a position because I was more marketable at that time where I was able to work full-time remote. And the headquarters for that company was actually a day's drive away. So there was no way I was ever going to get called in for work. And we had better pay and more flexibility. So this was my dream job. This is something that I thought I wanted. It was going to fulfill me. I was working as a transplant case manager, which I really loved. And this was the answer to my work/family life balance. So why did I still have a desire for more? This was my dream job. I had an awesome manager. I worked with an awesome team and awesome coworkers. I had a great relationship with the liaisons at the other companies that I worked with whose contracts we managed. The company had great pay, a great retirement plan, and great time off. I was empowered to do what I needed to do. There was no micromanaging. The results were more important than the how, and I had great work-life balance. I was washing the dinner dishes when my neighbors were just pulling into the driveway. I had weekends off. I had an 8 to 5 schedule. I could eat lunch with my kids at their school, or for my teenager, I could take her lunch because, of course, she didn't want to be seen eating with mom. I could do laundry, start dinner, run errands, all during my lunch break. So why did I leave? In episode 5, From Bedside Nurse to Living on the Beach in Mexico, Part 2, the 5-year plan, I talked about how I left my job and went full-time in my business. We will have a link in the show notes. But today I want to talk about the why. I still felt like something was missing. As much as I loved helping my clients, my patients, I was only able to help one person at a time. With my book side hustle, I was able to impact hundreds, if not thousands, of case managers who were all able to positively impact their clients and patients. In reality, with my business, I was touching more lives, although indirectly. So that's reason number 1. Reason number 2, even though I had a great schedule and lots of flexibility, I still wanted more. I wanted to work when I wanted to work, on what I wanted to work on, and with who I wanted to work with. For example, right now, I basically set my own schedule. If I'm having a good day, I may work longer. If I'm tired or something else comes up, I can just take a break or even quit for the day. I can take vacations whenever I want, wherever I want, for as long as I want, and I don't have to ask anybody for permission. I also wanted to be able to choose which projects I worked on and be able to delegate things that I didn't want to do. Now I get to choose who I work with, who I collaborate with, who I contract with as a 1099, who my instructors are that teach my courses, who my authors are that I work with, and who my customers are. Yes, I've even fired customers if I didn't like working with them. Okay, reason number 3. I wanted to control my income. There will always be a cap on how much you can make when you're working for someone else. I'm a hard worker, and I wanted to control the amount of income that I could generate. Number 4. I wanted to be able to live anywhere. As you know, I live in Mexico, on the beach. I couldn't do that if I was working for an employer. Although with my job I was able to work from anywhere with an internet connection that met the company's conditions, I wanted to live outside the United States. I wanted to travel the world, and I knew I couldn't do that working for somebody else. So basically, I wanted control. I wanted control of my life, my time, my future, who I worked with, what kind of work I did. I just wanted control. And finally, I wanted to help other people do what I did. It was so amazing to be on this side of starting a business when everything's finally together and it's working and all the systems and processes are in place and I'm able to work on what I want when I want to. And I wanted to help other people do that. And I knew I couldn't do that if I was still working my full-time job. So these are my whys. I want to help you discover your whys. What do you want to do? What do you really want to do? And why do you want to do it? That is honestly the first of many steps to success, knowing your why. There have even been books written about knowing your why. There are companies built around the vision board and knowing your why and helping you to figure out your why and what you're doing and why you're doing it so that you too have that drive. That's the first step. You have to know why, what you want and why you want it. Without that, we just can't move forward. We're stuck. And your why has to be big enough. It needs to be big enough and strong enough to keep you moving on those days when you really don't want to. And honestly, without a dream and without a why, you just keep drifting through life, aimlessly going through day by day, one day looking just like the next, and just going through life. And then you look back and you're like, wow, how did I get to here? If you're listening to this podcast, it's because you want something more. And I want to help you figure out what that is. My friend Janine Kelbach and I, who I've interviewed several times on this podcast, are going to be doing a webinar. I'll have all the information on the show notes. This is a free webinar where we're going to walk you through step 1 of our process to get you to where you want to be, to help you to figure out your dreams and then go for them so that you too can be living your dream life. I don't do these podcasts to brag, but I do them to inspire you. And it's so encouraging when I get emails from people who say that I have inspired them. And I want to help you. I don't want to just inspire you. I want to equip you to make sure that you can have the dream life that you want. So I would encourage you to check out the show notes. I'll have a link there where you can register to our Zoom webinar, scheduled for Sunday, May 16th at 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central, 12 Mountain, and 11 Pacific. I really hope to see you there. Again, check the show notes. We'll have a link there where you can register for the Zoom. And if you're listening to this later, check out the show notes anyway. We'll probably have a replay for you. That's a wrap for this week's episode. I hope you found it inspiring, and I hope it leaves you wanting to figure out what your dream is. And if you already know what your dream is, I hope it leaves you wanting to go for that dream. And if you're going for that dream, congratulations. Until next week, adios from beautiful Puerto Aventuras, Mexico.